And let me come out now for more discussion on the election with our roundtable. I have here George Will. Welcome back to our old friend Fareed Zakaria, now the host of Fareed Zakaria's GPS on CNN, and of course the editor of Newsweek International. David Gergen from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, advisor to many presidents. And Cynthia Tucker, editorial page editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm tempted to say, what should we talk about today? but let's just start out. We heard, George Will, Rahm Emanuel's take on what Barack Obama was elected to do. What do you think the voters were saying in a big way on Tuesday?
They were saying we don't like the competence of the government that we've been experiencing. Can I give you 3 points that should cheer up Republicans and 3 that should cause them despair? Start with despair. 90% of John McCain's vote was white. That's fine in 1976 when 90% of the turnout is white. It was 77% in 2004. It was 74% this time. The trend line is down and alarming. Second, 25% of Barack Obama's vote were young people under 30 years old. The question is, does this imprint a generation for a generation? And finally, the Republican Party is becoming a regional party. The red is concentrated in the South. There are 64 congressional seats in the Northeast, 8 of them held by Republicans. Now the good news. Running in the most daunting conditions confronting the Republicans since the Depression, John McCain still got 46% of the vote. Furthermore, this electoral earthquake was produced by 4% shift. Kerry gets 78% and is consigned to oblivion. Obama gets 42%, and the world.
But that's the story of American politics. Small changes make enormous differences.
Indeed, it is, because the much maligned and much misunderstood Electoral College and the winner-take-all allocation of electoral votes does what it's supposed to do. It kind of presents a national mandate that might not be there simply in the popular vote. Finally, 1/4 of all of Obama's voters say the government's doing too much. Half of Obama's voters, this is exit poll self-definition, define themselves as moderates or conservatives.
So much there to pick up on. Cynthia, where do you want to begin?
Well, let me begin with George's point about those who said the government is doing too much or shouldn't do more. 51% of the electorate said that the government should do more to solve problems. And that's the first time there has been a majority since pollsters started asking that question.
Especially
back
in the economy.
In the 90s. So I think that Obama has a mandate for significant change. If his is a competent administration, then I think absolutely we're talking about a realignment that could last for a generation. Interestingly enough, the group of voters who most substantially still identify as Republicans are those between 30 and 49. Those were the voters who were young when Ronald Reagan was president, and his was seen as a successful presidency. If Obama is also seen as a successful president, then I think the young voters will stay with Democrats for a generation.
David, we've heard the word competence twice now, and that makes it sound as if the election is, as much as anything else, a referendum on George Bush.
Well, it was a massive repudiation of the last 8 years, and I think that's central to the argument. But I think it was also, and just as importantly, perhaps more importantly, an embrace of change, both politically and culturally. This was a cultural election as much as it was a political election, and it said a great deal about the desire of the country for more diversity, for openness, and a willingness now to embrace an African American as president at a country 20 years ago was inconceivable.
But that's what's so interesting about it, Fareed. It almost seemed as if it was race was a non-issue by the time we got to the voting. 80% of voters said it wasn't a factor in their voting at all.
Well, and that's why I think this is a big deal. This is a potentially realigning election because it does seem to bring together political issues, cultural issues, and ideological issues. I mean, I think that there is some kind of new America out here that the Democratic Party is appealing to much more. David Frum, a conservative writer, had a very nice line in a column this week where he said, college-educated Americans clearly feel the Democratic Party is safe and can be trusted with their money, but that the Republican Party cannot be trusted with their values. In other words, there is some kind of shift here taking place where people regard the Republican Party as out of touch. And I think it's real. If you look at, Richard Weaver once said, ideas matter. And George Will has occasionally said, only ideas matter. Well, the Republican ideas of tight money, low taxes, deregulation, seem kind of weirdly irrelevant in a world where you have unregulated financial industry.
It's interesting when you go to the building blocks of the Obama coalition, whether it can last. We'll see. African Americans, Hispanics, young people, right? Two-thirds of Hispanics, two-thirds of under 30s. Yet he also won this very interesting group that I think Fareed is referring to, relatively affluent, college-educated professionals across the board. In another generation, they would be called Rockefeller Republicans.
He carried those he's going to tax, those are earning over $200,000. Right. In 3 counties.
He carried everyone with a college education.
In 3 counties surrounding Denver. 3 counties, suburban counties. And by the way, he got 50% of the suburban vote, which is astonishing. In 3 counties surrounding Denver, he got 100,000 more votes than Kerry got just 4 years ago. That's an astonishing sign of broad-based strength.
George, I want to pick up on the Hispanic thing, though, because I think that is the single largest net shift. I may be wrong, but I believe that that's the case. 66% of the Hispanic vote, or 67% of the Hispanic vote, 10 points up from Kerry. If you look at Florida, he carries Florida by 15 points to the Hispanic vote. Kerry lost it by 12 points. The immigration issue is the single issue that has done the Republican Party more harm in this election than any other.
Actually, the largest group shift was among the young, of 18 to 29.
No, I meant ethnic groups.
But 18 to 29-year-old, to go back to what Cynthia was saying, 8 years ago, Gore won it by 2, Kerry won it by 9, Obama won it by 35. And that group coming in, this millennial generation, the Times renamed today the O generation, along with the Hispanic generation, that's the future. If you look
pick up on Cynthia's point, you were in Reagan's White House. He solidified that vote for at least a generation, at least up until 2000.
The young vote.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
How does Obama do it?
Well, it's very important you said that, because when people come of age and how they vote a couple of times for one party, they tend to stick with that party for a long time thereafter. And Reagan brought in a great number of young people who continue to be more conservative today than most of the population, especially the young. Obama now has the opportunity, because of this enthusiastic embrace and the huge number of volunteers that he had out of young, to become the leader and spokesperson for that generation, both politically and culturally.
I'll tell you what I think
very, very important.
I think what you have to do, George, is this for the young. I think the issue is not the old debate: less government, more government. It's sort of smart government. Everyone accepts that government has certain inevitable responsibilities. The whole idea that we were going to get rid of government by having lower taxes hasn't worked. We simply borrowed the money instead. We kept the same size of government, in fact, expanded it. So what I think people are saying is, look, let's make this thing work, and let's not have it be predatory and corrupt.
And meanwhile, Cynthia, for so many African Americans, there was just this disbelief, I think, right up until the final moment. They said it couldn't be done, to quote Barack Obama from Iowa, yet it happened.
I was one of those who didn't quite believe it. It was only in October that I started to think perhaps this could happen. I grew up in the Deep South under Jim Crow, the part of the nation, by the way, that is still firmly entrenched with the Republican Party. I didn't believe it would happen. I was worried about the Bradley effect. I think one of the things we now know is that there may have been a reverse Bradley effect. Not only were there unlikely voters that pollsters didn't count, but there may have also been some whites, oddly enough, who were traditionally cultural conservatives, who had a lot of very conservative friends, older voters in Ohio and Pennsylvania, who told pollsters they were voting for McCain, but instead in the voting booth voted for Obama.
You know, we're going to have to take a break. Before we do, George, you and I have to clean up some business from last week. We had the predictions last week, and you and I came closest. Let me show our viewers what we had here. The final outcome on electoral votes was 364, with Missouri hanging out there. I was at 353. You were at 378. So unless Missouri flips, I take that one. In the Senate, it's 57 with 3 hanging out there. I was at 58. You were at 59. Neither one of us knows who's going to win that one yet. In the House, you were closer. It looks like it's going to be 256 to 260 for the Democrats. You had it at 257. I had it at 264. So we'll call it a tie for now, but if Missouri flips, I think you got a better chance of actually winning this one in a recount.
Oh, good.
We'll have more roundtable when we come back.